Hello. Now, what we have seen so far for compression members is that how to derive the theoretical column curves or strength curves, and how real column behavior is different from the ideal curves. And there were two approaches. One was being used by the earlier IS 800, and one is being used by the current IS 800, which are used to derive the different strength curves for real columns. Now, we were looking at this column curves which are given in IS 800 2007, and the design strength is also given as an expression. So the design compressive strength, as per this clause 7121 of the IS 800, so the design compressive strength is given as this expression, where this 1 over phi plus this expression, that is denoted as chi as well. So this is the strength reduction factor. Okay, and phi is defined like this. And if you are curious about from where these things are coming, it will be useful to look at the derivation of the Perry-Robertson approach. So in the previous session I showed a link of a set of lecture notes which are available, which you can refer for the derivation, and from there it will become clear how these numbers or expressions are coming out. Now this alpha is an imperfection factor which is given in table 7 of the IS 800. Chi is called the stress reduction factor. So if you look at what chi is doing, is that if there were no imperfections, the failure strength will be Fy by gamma m naught, right? So gamma m naught is the partial material safety factor. So if there were no imperfections, the things will fail in terms of only yielding. But because of imperfections, it can fail before yielding. So that is what this chi is doing. So it's getting multiplied to the ideal strength, right? And that is where it is being called a stress reduction factor. So now, if we want to calculate design strength, of course, looking at the graph every time is going to be time consuming, and it is going to be a little bit ambiguous as well. So the IS 800 gives, there are two options. In fact, there are three options. One is to use this formula to calculate things. The other is that IS 800 table 8 gives the values of chi, or the stress reduction factor, for different configurations of yield strength of the material and for different slenderness ratios. Similarly, the IS 800 table 9 gives directly the values of FCD also, which is the design compressive strength, right? It can be used directly. And for intermediate values of slenderness ratio, it is possible to use linear interpolation. And the amplification factor alpha, sorry, the imperfection factor alpha, this actually takes into consideration different buckling classes. Now, these buckling classes we will discuss in a little bit. But before we go into the buckling classes, just wanted to show you the tables. So these are this is the table 8A, which is, stress reduction factor high for column buckling class A. Similarly, there is a table 8B, again values of high for buckling class B. There is 8C and 8D, which are self-explanatory. And similarly, there is table 9A, which directly gives the design strength, FCD in megapascals, right? This is for buckling class A. Then FCD for buckling class B, for C, and for D. So this is how these tables can be directly used for different buckling classes. Now let us move on to discuss a little bit about what these buckling classes are. Okay. So in reality, what we see is, before global buckling can happen, right? So there are two possibilities. So either the global buckling is achieved, which is what we were seeing in when we are doing experiments with these ruler, that if we apply enough compressive force, this will begin to bend. This is the global buckling phenomena, right? But in certain situations, what is also possible is a local buckling, which means the outstanding members. So if you look at this photograph, the outstanding members, in this case the lower flange, it goes out of plane, right? So if we are looking at the cross section, it's like from here it goes down like that, right? So this is a instead of being straight, it bends like that, so out of plane, right? So this is a local buckling phenomenon. Let's try to look at it with a simple model. So this is a cardboard which I've bent in the shape of an angle, and let's say it's being loaded axially, right? So we keep it like that, and then from top we apply a compressive force, right? Now what you will notice is that as we keep applying this force, there are the this, for example, is being bent locally, right? There is no global failure which is happening, but the faces are being bent, right? So this phenomena where the outstanding legs, they begin to fail in a local manner, right? This will be more visible if we take paper, for example, which has much smaller thickness, right? So as soon as we apply a load, you will see that this particular member, or this particular portion of the member, that buckles locally, right? So it bends in a local way. So we have not reached the overall strength, but this member has yielded locally. Sorry, it has buckled locally, right? So this kind of a phenomena where outstanding legs, if they are long enough, and if they are thin enough, they can actually tend to buckle locally before the global buckling can take place. Okay, so this is what the local buckling phenomena is, and it actually depends on the outstanding leg, the length of the outstanding thing, and the thickness. Okay, now if we take the same paper that we had earlier, but if we fold these legs into two, let's say we fold it like that. So we have, so earlier we had an L shape, now it's like a W shape or an M shape, right? Now if we try to do the same thing, we will see that it will be able to take much larger amount of load. And one more thing which is now it can be seen is that the extreme, this one and this one, these are actually still susceptible to local buckling, but this portion, the this portion and that portion, these are now not susceptible to that much of local buckling. Okay, primarily because this is now being supported by this member and that member, right? So the portion of a member which is supported by another portion, that will be less likely to undergo local buckling. Okay, so if you look at the I section, for example, which we have drawn here, the web of the I section is actually supported on two sides by the flanges, right? So it has two supports, and hence the web is less likely to undergo local buckling compared to the flange. The flange is actually more likely to go under local buckling because it is supported only on one side, the other side is free. Okay, so the flange of an I section is more likely to undergo local buckling, whereas the web of an I section is less likely to undergo local buckling. So these are some considerations, which are important from a local buckling perspective, right? So web is at a lesser risk, flange is at a greater risk. If we were to consider a box section, now in this case, all members are, all portions are doubly supported, one supporting other two. So in this case, it will be symmetrical with respect to buckling class. Okay. Now, what happens in these cases is that when we say buckling class A, so as we move from buckling class A to D, we are considering more and more effects of imperfections. Okay. So, in fact, more and more effects of local buckling. So, it is possible to say hypothetically that for class A, the local buckling stress is actually more than, let's say, the initial yielding stress. Okay, so this is, remember, this is the normalized stress. So in this case, what will happen is that when we start loading it, the curve, the load predicted by the column curve will be achieved first, and local buckling may not occur at all. Okay, so for this example, for this reason, if you see that for all the classes A, B, C, and D, for lower slenderness ratios where yielding governs, these are stress reduction factors. Right? So these are the values of chi, and these are taken from IS 800. So the values of chi for all of them is same, and it is equal to 1, which means for class A and for lower slenderness ratios, the the local buckling stress is greater than the overall yielding stress, right? So local failure will not occur, and global failure will occur, and that is where the full there is no stress reduction at all, right? So full strength is being achieved. Whereas for, let's say, for class B, right? So for class B, it is possible that now I think this should not start from here, maybe somewhere from here, right? So for class B, what happens is that there are certain portions where if you load, the local buckling will occur first before reaching the full strength, right? And there are some portions where the global buckling will happen first before reaching the local, right? So this is where for class B, the strength reduction factors are lesser than that for class A. So as we go from class A to class D, the susceptibility of local buckling increases, and hence the stress reduction factor is decreasing, right? Similarly for class C, it is further down, and class D it is further down. Okay. Now, one more thing to note here is that for very very small slenderness ratios, right? And again, this we have discussed earlier as well. So for very small slenderness ratios, there is no effect of this local buckling because the members are able to achieve global Fy before they can locally buckle in a way. So if you see, there is no change in moving from class A to D for smaller slenderness ratios. Okay. Now, similarly for larger slenderness ratios, the change is very small. So for KL by R equal to 250, it's almost 15% change in going from A to B in the stress reduction factor. If we were to do a KL by R of 300, it will be even lesser. So if the generalized slenderness is larger, the effects of local buckling will not be that much because the global buckling will happen much sooner compared to local buckling. Okay. And as earlier, the most amount of effect will be for the intermediate range of buckling slenderness ratios, where there is a large impact of local buckling, and that is where there is a big. So for KL by R equal to 100, there is a 30% change in going from class A to class D type of buckling. Now the buckling classes are defined in this table 10 of IS 800. Okay. So if you see, it gives buckling classes for different cross sections and different configurations. So for a hot rolled I section, the buckling classes are given on the extreme right column, but they depend on which axis bending we are considering. So, and it also depends on the H by B ratio, which is the depth to width ratio. So if the H by B ratio is large, the buckling classes are better. If the H by ratio is small, the buckling classes are inferior. Okay, you can try to think about a reason for that, and try to relate it with the idea that we discussed, that if the length of the outstanding flange is larger, in that case, local buckling will be more susceptible. Okay, so in that case, the buckling class will be lower. Similarly, for H by B, in addition to H by B ratio, there is also a mention of the thickness of the flange. Okay, so if the thickness of the flange is small, in that case, the buckling class is better, and if the thickness of the flange is larger, the buckling class is inferior. Again, you can try to think about it in similar lines. So if the flange is thicker compared to the web, it will attract more force. Okay, and then there will be a likelihood of early buckling. So that is why it is there. Now another important thing which we can note in this table is that, again, welded I sections are in general of lower buckling class compared to hot rolled sections. Okay, and the reason for this is that when we do welding, so welded I sections are primarily made by welding two different plates, right? So in welding, what happens is a lot of local residual stresses are formed, and that increases the susceptibility of localized buckling because of residual stresses. Okay, so again, the buckling classes can be B or C or C or D depending on if the thickness of flange is small versus large. Okay. Now, if we look at the hollow sections, which are symmetrical sections, in this case, for hot rolled these kind of sections, for anyone it is buckling class A, which means in this case, since each member is being supported by two other members, there is no significant effect of local buckling, and hence buckling class A is considered. For cold forms, the buckling class is lower, primarily because these are more sleek in nature. Okay, so like this, you can go through this table, and you can look at what these things are, and you can try to relate it with the amount of support which is available and the thickness ratios, etc. So what we have seen is that there can be three primary limit states of failure for columns or for members under compression. One is squashing, which is dependent on the yielding. Right? The other is flexural buckling. This is elastic flexural buckling. This is a global buckling mode. And the third is local buckling, which is a local failure mode. But this local buckling can also lead to a global failure, and it can actually happen before the global failure is triggered. Okay. So there are different factors which govern each of these, and there are different provisions to account for the loss of strength in the code, which considers the real column strength curves, which is primarily based on the Perry-Robertson approach. And there are different buckling classes which are dependent on the plate thickness and the amount of support which is available for each outstanding leg. Okay. So we have not yet considered effects of on overall bending moment on the column, and this is something which we will consider when we start doing beams. So we have done so far, members under pure compression.